Number 3. Tomasz Narkun vs Saparbek Safarov. The fighters were supposed to lock horns in 2011 at an M1 event in Russia. After the weigh-in, during the face-to-face, the Russian provoked the Pole and then slapped him. Due to Safarov's behavior, Narkun decided to resign from the fight, arguing that he'd come for a professional duel and stated that he'd like to face the Russian somewhere in Europe. Safarov, on the other hand, said that it was him who had been provoked and hadn't been able to keep his reactions under control. He also expressed his surprise that Narkun had resigned, as he'd approached Tomasz after the weigh-in and they'd shaken hands. He also suggested that the Pole was afraid and then used the difficult weight-cutting process as justification for his behavior. It's also worth remembering that Safarov also seriously provoked his rival before his third appearance in the UFC. Number 2. Jeremy Stephens vs Drakkar Klose. These two were supposed to fight in April last year in the UFC. During the face-to-face, when the fighters touched heads, Jeremy unexpectedly pushed the relaxed Drakkar, who almost fell over. After a few hours, Ariel Helwani released a statement that the fight would be postponed due to an injury to Klose, caused during the face-to-face. The details of the injury were released soon afterwards by Drakkar himself. After I was pushed by Jeremy Stephens at UFC face-offs, I immediately felt my hand go numb and neck tighten up. Sean Shelby and the UFC officials sent me to the PI to get worked on by the UFC PT staff for 2 hours. I spent the night eating, rehydrating, stretching, and even saw the PT staff later that night. I woke up early this morning with a migraine, headache, nausea, and the only thing that made me feel better was laying in the dark. Dana White and the UFC got me medicine, and I rested for a couple of hours before getting up and vomiting. It was at that point we called the UFC doctor, and he made the decision to send me to the hospital. I'm sorry to everyone who was excited for this fight. I tried to do everything I could to stay in this fight, but these issues are out of my control. A few months ago, the fighter said that he was still feeling pain in his spine due to 2 herniated discs and that the doctors were recommending an operation. Stephens, though, didn't see anything wrong with what he had done.
I showed up, he didn't. I never thought like a push would go this far. I didn't think he was like gonna act like that, respond like that, and kind of treat, come at the UFC like that and make it like a whole spectacle. Totally cool with exactly what I did. I'm a fighter. I'm primal in those moments. Like, come up or not, hands behind your back, you put your nose to nose with me, you broke conduct first.
It's worth noticing that Stephens' next rival, Mateusz Gamrot, learned his lesson from this situation and had his guard up during the face-to-face, while Stephens kept his hands behind his back this time. Number 1. Janka vs Christopher Sengele. These gentlemen were to clash in 2018 at a Czech XFN event. During the face-to-face, Janka pushed his opponent hard, and Sengele fell to the floor, knocking over an advertising banner. The Czech organizer reacted to this disgraceful behavior by removing Janka from the fight card and suspended him from further fights in the XFN. However, Janka appeared at the event and entered the ring to apologize to his revival and the fans, explaining that stress from cutting weight had got to him.